Well, hello and welcome. I'm Tom Strong, President and CEO at Building Transformations and Principal at Wire.Construction. Thank you so much for joining us. I understand we have a lot of people joining us from around the world, and that's because we have a number of speakers that are joining us from around the world, from the United States, from Canada, from Europe, from Africa. This is really a global event. Very excited that we were able to pull this together. So today we're going to be talking about the social impact of Proptech. As you know, the Proptech industry is facing a lot of challenges around affordable housing, ESG initiatives, sustainability, and we're ultimately all looking for ways to improve our operations to reduce our carbon footprint. And this is really a global challenge, and the Proptech industry is globally connected. So we're really excited to help to host this event, this conversation that we're going to be having with all of our global partners. I want to thank the Digital Build to National Capital Region, Kirk Selke and John Pierre. Thank you so much for helping to pull together this event. I also want to thank Proptech Africa, Wayne and Sean. Thank you again for collaborating with us. I want to thank NARREACH, which is the National Association of Realtors Accelerator, led by Lynette. Lynette, thank you so much for joining us again and helping to pull together all these great speakers. And of course, BIM Africa with Moses and Oliyemi. Thank you so much for bringing the African perspective and collaborating again with us on these events. So really excited about our all of our speakers. We have three panels lined up with three kind of distinct perspectives. One is going to be focused on startups, so looking at this all the new technology and sort of the story of launching a new company and bringing it to market. And creating something new in the Proptech space that will ultimately help owners operate their buildings more efficiently. So it should really be a great discussion. Looking forward to that. We also have the owner's perspective, a panel of owners that are going to be looking at the impact of Proptech on their day-to-day, how they're thinking about development, how they're operating their buildings and creating innovation and efficiency there. And of course, we have the incubator and venture panel, which is a really important part of this ecosystem. We need the venture dollars coming in to support the startups to create these new products and innovations to bring them to market. So, all three of these perspectives together kind of make this ecosystem that allow all of these new things to be created to address the challenges that we're facing. So it should be a pretty interesting day. I also want to thank, before we get started, all of the partners for Building Transformations. We have a number of different partners that make this possible. We are a not-for-profit organization. We're primarily funded by membership dues, but we're also funded by our mission partners that support this initiative and other initiatives. So thank you very much to all of our partners. So the first session that we have is a fireside chat with Thano Lambrinos. He's the Senior Vice President of Digital Buildings, Experiences, and Innovation at QuadReal Property Group. I've known Thano for a number of years. We work together. He's a senior leader with focus on technology and digital transformation and innovation. He's responsible for the global digital strategy and at this world-class investment operating and development company. He has 15 years of experience working in a number of different capacities, working in the supply chain, working for trades, working for general contractors, and now development. And he's a world-class leader in his space, and we're very lucky to have a discussion with him today to kind of kick off the day. Okay, well, Thano, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk to us. Really appreciate it. I guess the first thing I'd like to ask is maybe you can correct all the things that I got wrong in the introduction there and give a better introduction for yourself.
Sure thing. Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me. Great to speak to you guys today. For those who don't know me, my name is Thano Lambrinos, as Tom said. I am responsible for our digital buildings, customer experience, and innovation practice here at QuadReal. For those who aren't terribly familiar with QuadReal, we are a firm that develops, owns, manages, and invests in real estate. Currently, assets under management in and around $67 billion. Of that, a good majority of it is real estate. Some of it is mortgage and debt. Half of the portfolio, give or take half of the portfolio, is domestically here in Canada. The other half internationally through joint ventures and OpCo partners. Of that real estate portfolio, 40 million or so square feet in Canada. All in all, I think we're 36 million square feet of office, 9 million square feet of retail, pushing 90 million square feet of industrial, 53,000 residential units, 24,000 or so student housing units. So all that to say, it is a very large portfolio with a lot of diversity. So with that, you can imagine that my role in helping to drive digital transformation and digital change in our built environments requires the engagement of a number of different stakeholders across geographies, with a number of different focuses within the business that I'm doing my best to try to align so that we can drive business outcomes. So that's me, and thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it sounds like a really, really challenging job, and really like huge shoes to fill. I mean, just thinking about all those different sectors that you're touching and all that real estate that you got to think about kind of strategically and holistically across that whole portfolio. That's a huge undertaking. Thano, we've known each other for a few years. You worked at Elliston Construction, but maybe you can give us a bit of a snapshot of your career path, your journey. Like, how did you get into this position? And what were the steps that you took to get here?
Yeah, with something like that, it's never a straight line, as you can imagine. As a kid, I never thought I'd get into construction. I certainly didn't think I'd get into technology, as we all wanted to be hockey players or doctors or lawyers or firefighters or policemen or what have you. But I kind of fell into this, to be honest with you. I started my career in sales and business development, quickly got into the trades, mechanical and electrical, focused on actually signing and delivering service agreements through a number of different vertical markets, including commercial real estate, but also healthcare and institutional facilities and data centers and places like that, and spent probably a good 12, 13 years in the trades, maybe less. I'm getting older and older, and I start losing track, but spent a lot of time in the trades. Came over, as you mentioned, to Elliston to help start and run their digital services group. And through that, met the folks here at QuadReal who were interested in what digital transformation meant to them, realized that, actual implementation and execution in the built environment usually requires a pretty good understanding of construction methodology, and certainly M&E systems, as they are very critical to the foundation of the digital strategy when it comes to interacting with the built form. And so they asked me to come over and help start or help continue on the journey that they'd already started on. And then over time, I was lucky enough to be put in charge and responsible for the practice, and have built up a team underneath us of a number of different disciplines to help us execute on the vision.
Yeah. So, I mean, all that, like the practical experience of working construction and understanding the perspective of trades must really help with your knowledge and allow you to communicate really effectively across all levels in the business. And you're obviously a seasoned communicator, and you're very effective at it. And I would imagine those skills come in handy when you're trying to drive transformation, like help manage change across a big company. So maybe you kind of give some advice maybe to different companies, maybe other real estate companies. Like, how do you inspire others to evolve? How do you lobby internally, top down, bottom up? Like, what is the strategy on how you communicate to drive, transformation within an organization?
It is a really good question, and it's truly multifaceted. And, to your point, the fact that I'm lucky enough to have experience in the deployment of actual infrastructure, whether those be buildings or, commercial buildings or healthcare or data centers or things of that nature, helps to speak the various different languages of the different stakeholders that I have to engage with. And I mean, that's probably one of my biggest pieces of advice is, unless you're in a position and have done your research, if you're not in a position to understand how the various folks that you're communicating with need to be communicated to have your strategy be articulated in a way that they understand it, you're going to have a hard time. So I think one of the reasons that, frankly, we've been as successful as we have been deploying the strategy is we've done everything that you just described. Lobbied, bottom up, working with, in our existing portfolio, our income producing property or IPP portfolio, engaged with the front lines to really understand what their challenges were, engaged with the folks across leasing and asset management and investment to understand what was important to them. And then on the construction and the development side, worked with our development and construction teams. But also, as you mentioned, I understand the language of the trade. So a lot of the initial hurdles and challenges when trying to implement digital change, specifically in the built form, is this status quo that is very, very difficult to break, and the fact that there's a lot of risk to break it. So trades, constructors, architects, consultants tend to throw up walls of fear, leveraging fear for owners that don't quite understand what's involved in the deployment of these assets. They'll take that fear at face value and then usually shy away. Where in our case, we're lucky enough, and the team's lucky enough, to have a background in construction development, but also I have folks that are very, very good on the networking side and cybersecurity and data science and product design and development, and customer support. So we really cover all the spectrum. So, I mean, to go back to your original question, the communication is A, find out what language you should communicate with them in, and B, really find out what's in it for them so that you can navigate the conversations and identify what outcomes are most valuable to you, but to them as well, and be able to satisfy them with the strategy and the approach that you're putting forward.
Yeah, finding those opportunities for alignment with the other stakeholders, I guess, that you're interacting with. That's really great advice. So maybe, I mean, we've talked a little bit about all the different sectors and all the different types of assets that you're managing. If you could kind of summarize at a very high level your vision for how you're utilizing technology. I know you're doing a number of different things, but what's like the core challenge you're trying to solve? What is the core value that you're delivering?
Yeah, and that's kind of where we started this entire strategic development exercise that we've been on, or that we were on very early on, and that we are transitioning into execution phases. What are we trying to accomplish? And we started, just to take a step back, all those stakeholder groups that I talked about earlier. We actually started by engaging with all of them very, very closely to identify what their business challenges were, what their problems were, what their utopian state of the built form would look like in these various asset classes, identified a series of use cases, or pardon me, before that, identified a series of high-level business outcomes, which fed into a use case schedule, which fed into user journeys that ultimately rolled into various specifications and how to actually, what various technologies and how to actually do this. So, what are we trying to solve? Very simply, two things. Improve operational efficiency, and then there's a number of things under that, and improve the occupant experience. At the highest level, those are our two main drivers, and how we can leverage digital technologies to do that. So within those kind of two main drivers, we focus on reducing capital and operational costs, improving operational efficiency. Obviously, ESG is of the utmost importance now. So driving not only energy reduction, which used to be the goal, but driving carbon reduction. I talked a bit about risk, leveraging these various technologies to reduce risk from a cyber and an operational perspective. Identify new revenue opportunities to see if we can interact with our customers in different and unique ways that can maybe make us ancillary revenue streams that aren't traditionally tied to rent, which is how we're used to collecting money. And lastly, and probably most importantly, is enhancing that experience. So those are the key drivers that we then created the use cases to satisfy one or more of those, and then have been over the years piloting and deploying and now scaling technologies to help us deliver on those business drivers for the various different stakeholders within the organization.
Yeah, and I love that. I mean, pretty much all of the things that you mentioned there are measurable. Like you can measure those outcomes very, very closely. So really, like it's a practical vision, and it's tied to like high value. Well, you guys are obviously ahead of the curve. How would you describe the rest of the industry? Are like Oxford, Brookfield, the other kind of major developers in the ecosystem at this same level? And how do you perceive the rest of the industry, like on the supply side with construction companies? Where do you think we are on the curve?
It's interesting. I would say, as a general statement, we're still very early. To use a baseball analogy, we're probably in the top of the first, maybe the bottom of the first. So there's a lot of game to go. But it really also depends on the stakeholders of a given project or a given portfolio and the way that they've approached their digital transformation strategy. So, I can't speak fully about the others, nor should I. I'll focus on ourselves. We've taken, as I hopefully articulated in the last few minutes, a really pragmatic approach towards the delivery of our digital vision, focusing on how we can incorporate it into either the existing portfolio or the existing construction processes and development process to ensure alignment between the stakeholders so that we can deliver on the outcomes leveraging technology economically, which is one of the big reasons that technology in real estate hasn't been widely adopted, because of the economic and financial challenges in incorporating it into the pro forma of a given project. It's always thought of as an expensive adder, where we've proven quite the opposite, that it can be cost neutral, cost positive, but have not only operational benefits day two, but also construction benefits in the streamlining of the way that we commission systems and things of that nature. So, the industry, generally speaking, I think is still very early. There's a lot of opportunity, which is exciting. Construction, the construction industry, I think, is also very early. But there's the challenge that we have is there's a lot of conflicting, I don't want to say archaic or arcane, but traditional status quo silos within the construction industry that are disincentivized to work with each other in a way that's conducive for real estate owner, operators, developers to get the end product that they want. So a lot of what we've done in driving this strategy throughout our organization is ensuring that the construction deployment methodology and procurement approach is aligned with the outcomes that we're looking to achieve. And sometimes that ruffles some feathers and makes people uncomfortable. But thankfully, because of the team we've developed, we've been able to back it up and have now implemented our approach on a number of different projects. So to summarize, we're early, construction's early, and construction also likes to push back pretty hard because we're moving cheese around, to use the old sales analogy. We're moving people's cheese around. Work's going into buckets that maybe it wasn't in before. We're taking it out of other folks' buckets. So it causes some disruption, but at the end of the day, those who really embrace and adopt are going to be the ones that more forward-thinking organizations like ourselves, but also the organizations that are following after us, closely behind us, that'll be looking to build in a similar fashion to bring these assets to bear, digitally enabled. They'll be starting to do the same thing too. So as a construction org, if you stay ahead of the curve, there's a lot of opportunity there for you as well.
Yeah, so all these companies, like the architects, the engineers, the builders, they're all going through this same transformation, or at least they should be if they want to survive the next 10 years, right? So obviously, you mentioned some of the procurement strategies. You're probably doing a lot more construction management, maybe some alliance contracts, IPD contracts. I don't know what you're exploring, but I would imagine that you're trying to get more and more involved to drive, more of your requirements that you need downstream earlier in the process. Probably an assumption. From your perspective, are there opportunities to bridge all the data that's being produced by the engineers and architects and collected by the general contractor into the asset management stage of the project? Do you see those opportunities, or do you see it as like, let's just get the project finished and grab information at the end of the project and bring it into our strategy? Like, how do you see that working?
No, it's certainly more of the former. I think there is a ton of opportunity and a huge gap in leveraging the data that's generated to create construction documentation and execute and bridge that to the operational phase. So some of the things that we're trying to do, to your point, we're getting involved very early in these projects, and we're getting deeply involved with the M&E, security, elevator, systems consultants and designers to ensure that our requirements are baked in. So as part of this digital playbook that we've developed for all of our new projects and our retrofit projects, we've actually gone to the detail of creating divisional specifications, either elements of the divisional specifications, 23, 25, 26, 27, 33, et cetera, either elements of or wholesale the entire specification that is then customized for the project, because it's absolutely critical for us that this is specified in a way that will allow us to take that data and roll it into operations. Because if we do the latter, as you've commented on, and wait until the end, things like data structures and nomenclatures and protocols are what they're going to be. So we dictate those things very early on to ensure that twofold, really. One, I just talked about operations and ensuring that we can transition it to day two, but equally as important, so that we can manage it throughout the construction process, so that when it comes time to commission and we're starting to digitally commission our assets and not just do, your traditional 10% commissioning. Okay, this looks good. Let's hope that nobody calls, or that hope the owners don't call in the next couple of years, and we'll fix it later. We're digitally commissioning the entire building out of the gate. So we're finding all kinds of interesting issues that we get to fix and address before occupancy. So it's certainly that there's a ton of data opportunity. The data opportunity exists, from design through construct into operations. And the only way as an owner, or developer, investor, manager of real estate, that will be successful is if we get involved early.
Yeah. So to me, that's very interesting, because the fact that you're looking for these companies to collaborate with you at those early stages means that this is part of the evaluation process when you go to look at partners that you want to work with, whether or not they can speak the language that you speak and deliver not just the building itself, but the data and systems to run that asset. So that's becoming how companies are competing.
Yeah,
I find it's interesting.
It's a criteria for selection. I mean, at this point, we've banged our heads against the wall enough with enough different folks to realize that unless you've got the right partners on the project that really share in your vision, you're likely not going to be successful. So yes, absolutely. To your point, that is a critical part of the criteria when we're selecting design consultants, architects, general contractors, trades, et cetera, to make sure that they're aligned with that vision. Because the last thing we need is a fight on our hands about an asset that we're frankly putting up all the capital for and are managing long term, while a lot of the folks are interested in doing their best to build it and get out. So we need to be aligned from the beginning to be successful.
So from your perspective, I mean, every general contractor, every engineer, architect comes to the table with their own technology in place. And you're obviously looking for this like digital project delivery at the end of the project, and you want it to come to you in the schemas and formats that you want. And companies are utilizing off-the-shelf technologies, and everyone's kind of having to choose between these big software companies that are starting to create the operating system for our industry. What's your perspective on the influence of these technology companies on the way the industry operates? Are you starting to kind of say, okay, we're aligned with this software product, so we want you as our partners to use these software products, or are you trying to drive more open standards on how information is exchanged?
It's a good question. And we did actually go through a process of looking at a lot of those software vendors that you've alluded to see if it would be appropriate for us to take that in-house ourselves, to use it to manage the development process. But what we found is a lot of it is more construction driven, and where we do have construction management folks on staff, we still do rely on the general contracting partners and the various folks in the AEC community to help stand our assets up. So there was a bit of a gap between what was required from our side on the development side and what construction folks were delivering. So I think they have effectively filled a pretty giant gap in the way that construction organizations deliver projects. And we're happy to work with folks that have some of these digital tools in place. And even though some of them do, in a lot of cases, it's not always consistent delivery because the tool is what it is. But unless you have a process, an effective process to managing the tool and managing the information in the tool, it just becomes a giant, FTP site, for lack of a better term, right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think there's a lot of opportunity to improve the utilization of those tools to really deliver value. But for us, when we talk about the data that we're interested in from an equipment and asset perspective, we're hiring our own, what we call, or what the industry calls, master systems integrators, or MSIs, to come in and help normalize all of that data, that equipment data, that asset data, that naming, that nomenclature that's assigned to, all of the different assets in the building, whether reporting or non-reporting, so that we can effectively transfer it over. So, I think there still is a disconnect between those construction platforms and what we need as developers.
Yeah, they're really managing kind of two separate problems, but some of the information certainly is valuable and should be brought across. I think the whole industry is kind of still struggling with how that works, because often the companies that are producing the technology for builders, they don't fully understand the owner's perspective and how they're going to use that information downstream. And honestly, like what you're doing in a lot of cases is pioneering. So you're like figuring out how to utilize that information to create value. So with that in mind, like thinking about the future, looking out like 5 years, what do you think is going to be what do you think is going to be the same in the way that we operate, and what do you think is going to be like dramatically different?
Yeah, I mean, 5 years ago, we were still kind of selling the same thing that we're trying to sell today. However, because of, and I wasn't going to bring up COVID, but because of COVID, we've seen a lot of acceleration in the way that digital technologies and Proptech and all of these different elements, construction tech are being adopted, which is a great thing. COVID obviously wasn't a good thing, but the outcome of it from that perspective is positive. And we're seeing, significant acceleration. So I would say that, there's still a lot of room in the industry for status quo, and there's still a lot of customers, owners, developers, operators that are still operating status quo. So in 5 years, I imagine there'll still be a handful of those around, but I would like to think that things are going to change significantly. The biggest changes I see, I'll kind of align with our overall digital strategy and our business strategy. I see the data driving operations a lot more than it does today, at a bigger level, at a portfolio level, not just at a building level, which is how operations still traditionally takes place, building by building, operator by operator, very siloed system by very siloed system within a single asset. We're in the process of amalgamating and aggregating all of that data and normalizing it so we can get and drive insights at a much higher level. I think that that's going to be a huge change that you'll start to see, and that'll change the way that we manage, change the way that we procure, change the way that really we manage buildings. I see the centralization of a lot of that management, leveraging those digital tools. So rather than having very highly skilled people focused on a single site, having those highly skilled people focused on a larger scale portfolio with more kind of first responders and lower technical people running around the sites on site to respond to issues as they arise. And then on the customer side, I think that there's obviously been a lot of discussion and a lot with respect to engagement of occupants, whether it's office tenants or residential tenants or folks visiting retail centers. So the digital experience of those users it's already starting, but much like the automation and things that you can do in your home today, that's going to be commonplace very soon. And a lot of it'll be table stakes. And then the next element, beyond that we're hopefully ahead of the curve on, is the data and analytics and the insights that we can drive from all that information so that we can serve our assets better, serve the environment better from a climate perspective, and serve our customers better.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Thano, for joining us today. I do appreciate your insights. I'd love to talk to you again soon. How can we learn more about you and your business?
Absolutely. QuadReal.com. Feel free to visit. There's a lot of information about our portfolio. I'm on LinkedIn /Thano. I got in real early, so I got my first name, although Thano wasn't entirely terribly popular until the Avengers, but that's neither here nor there. And feel free to send me a note if you're interested.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
You bet.